Did you watch The Fall Guy when it was on TV in the 1980s?
I did. So this was kind of early to mid 80s. And it used to be on ITV, I think, on a Friday evening. The Fall Guy.
It's kind of funny because you're getting a lot of American television, and our public television station, which is kind of similar to BBC, I suppose. It's publicly financed. We had all the old English stuff. So we had Faulty Towers. We had Upstairs, Downstairs. We had all these masterpiece theater things, which were just English, stagey television programs. We had all that stuff for free coming over, and it felt very, very old already because it felt like it was from the 70s and the 80s. But that was on our public television, and then the exchange was Fall Guy and 6 Million Men.
Yeah, who did better out of that? I'm not entirely sure. I think Upstairs, Downstairs must have given you about as realistic view of English life as The Fall Guy gave me of American life.
I think it was a raw deal both sides of the pond. It sucked for everyone.
That could have been the motto for 80s TV. It sucked for everyone. Hello and welcome to the Two Real Cinema Club. I'm James Ruzicka.
And I'm Andres Lorente. And every week on the Two Real Cinema Club, we watch two films. Very often they have very similar titles. And then we sort of make some sort of a synthesis of the two films and decide that, yeah, they are similar. They have very similar titles. That's why this week we talked about The Fall Guy, which is a new film out in the theaters now, and we compared it to, I think, 2006's film, The Fall.
The Fall, which is it's literally 2/3 of the exactly. More recent film.
66%. They share 60 to 60% of the same title.
I was thinking this way. Do you remember the Charlie's Angels movie? We've talked about this before.
With Drew Barrymore and
Cameron Diaz. Lucy Liu.
Yeah, Bill Murray.
Right at the beginning of that movie, there's like a gag about some characters that are on a plane, and the in-flight movie comes up, and the in-flight movie is T.J. Hooker, the movie. Oh. And they make some gags about, oh no, another movie based on a lame 80s TV series. And now we have another movie based on an even less fondly remembered 1980s TV series, The Fall Guy.
It seems like self-awareness is part of the entire conception of these films, too.
I mean, maybe. Apparently, as I was reading, this film's been in development for 20 years.
20 years, wow.
And it was originally going to be directed by McG, who directed the Charlie's Angels movie.
And is there a T.J. Hooker movie? There can't be. Is that just a joke?
At any moment now, I feel the floodgates have been opened, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Jesus.
But
Bill Shatner. If Bill Shatner's in it, it's fine. I'm fine with William Shatner in it as T.J. Hooker doing his own stunts, but anything else would be disappointment.
Still wearing that same toupee. So The Fall Guy, you were saying $130 million it cost.
Yeah, that's what I had pulled off of IMDb, I think, yeah.
Oof, and I suppose this is kind of, I suggested the other week that the Civil War was the sort of the beginning of the summer blockbuster season. Yeah. But it was like a sort of an art house version thereof. Whereas, this is unashamedly attempting to please crowds and get people queuing around the block. Yeah. This is an action comedy is what I guess you would call it.
I agree, yeah. And boy, one of the big names from last summer's blockbusters, Ryan Gosling's in this one as well. So that officially kicks off summer, I think.
Yeah. So directed by David Leitch. Or Leitch.
I think he said Leitch.
Leitch, who directed the John Wick film.
Okay.
Have you seen any of those John Wick films?
No. I've stayed a safe distance from that material.
I saw the first one, felt no great need to see the others. Written by Drew Pearce, who wrote Iron Man 3, Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw. So he has a lot of experience writing scripts where large metal objects collide. So clearly he's the man for the job. Well, shall I kick off by telling you a little bit about the story?
Yes, maybe.
Is that no? I'd rather you didn't.
What about Glenn Larson? Did you get his name in there too?
Whoa, so that guy is so synonymous with 80s TV, and he has his name on this too.
Yeah.
In fact, is he still alive, Glenn Larson?
No, I think he died some years ago, and I know nothing about the series, so maybe you know a little bit more how much his material is in there, or to what extent it's based on the series.
So, I did used to watch The Fall Guy when I was a kid, and I tell you what, there was definitely a character called Colt Seavers in it.
Oh, okay.
But that is about the limit.
Okay.
So for the original TV series, Lee Majors was a movie stuntman. At the beginning of every show, he would be doing stunt of the week, falling out of a helicopter or riding a motorbike or something. And then he had his sideline where he was a bounty hunter. Oh. And he would go off and bring back to justice people who'd skipped out on bail. Uh-huh. And there was him, and he had a couple of younger, more attractive assistants to help him out.
Okay.
But the TV series otherwise doesn't bear huge resemblance.
But that is kind of the structure. I don't want to give too much away. So, structurally, that's kind of similar to what.
It's not a million miles. It's not a million miles away, I suppose. You're right. Yeah. Right. I'll tell you a story here. I'll tell you the story.
Please.
So, The Fall Guy, I reckon it's an action comedy. I don't know how many of those kinds of films are made anymore. It's set in modern-day Los Angeles to start with. Colt Seavers is a movie stuntman, and he suffers an accident on set that leaves him with an injured spine and out of work. But 18 months later, he gets a call from Gail, the producer of that ill-fated project, and she wants Colt to travel to Australia to do stunts on a film for Colt's ex, first-time director Jodie. So when he shows up, she is less than pleased to see him. She feels that he ditched her after his accident. But he's out doing the stunts and he's helping on the films until Gail, the producer, confesses to him that she really called him because the film's star, Tom Ryder, has gone missing, and she only trusts Colt Seavers to find him discreetly before the whole film shuts down. However, as Colt searches for the missing star, he discovers violent girlfriends, belligerent drug dealers, a dead body, and a whole mess of trouble. Can he get Tom back in front of the camera and save Jodie's film? And can he tell Jodie about his feelings and resuscitate their love affair along the way?
Wow.
So that's the setup, isn't it? That's like the first half of the movie.
Yeah, it's good. It's good.
I have a few things to say before we ring the spoiler bell, but the most significant thing I'm going to say is that I don't think this film is very good. But we'll take it like one step at a time. But so we should talk about the opening image. So there's one thing I've learned from talking with you about films for these years is that we should talk about the opening image. And in this case, the film opens with a shot of a guy repeatedly falling down a hill.
Yeah.
And I think the theme of the film is largely when you fall down, you should get back up again. In fact, we do have that kind of classic screenwritery moment about 10 or 15 minutes into the film where one of the minor characters explicitly says the theme of the film out loud, virtually looking at the camera.
Yeah.
So we have this guy who keeps falling down a hill, and then we get a little voiceover, which always rings alarm bells, explaining what a stuntman is and who all the characters are. And then B, we get a montage of stunts from like completely other films, for I'm guessing a bunch of films that must include Leach and Pierce's previous films. It looks like some stunts from a Fast and Furious film, or maybe some stunts from John Wick. I mean, I don't know. But these are clearly stunts from gags that are not in this film. And it looks like B-roll. It looks like somebody's show reel or something like that. And I reckon, this is a dangerous precedent. If you're going to make a stunt-heavy film, do not start the film with a show reel of much better stunts than you're going to see in the rest of the film. It's like telling the audience, well, you could be at home watching these, but you're not. So you make of that what you will, I think, as an opening image.
Yeah, I think, well, they probably had access to licensing on some of those things, so maybe you're right that they came either from the same production company, because there's there's a lot of legal things you've got to step through in order to get permission to use some of those things properly. This film is it's a stunt film about stunt actors, I think. I mean, that's about what it is, honestly. There's not a whole lot of depth. This did not stay with me for a long time. I'm glad you said you did not think it was a very good film. I wrote it's a perfectly fine film, and I don't mean that in a positive way at all. It's functional. It does what it aims to do. It's not setting a super high bar for itself. It's perfectly fine.
I mean, in this country, it's been largely sold on the kind of the chemistry between the two leads.
Yep.
So that's kind of what the publicity has concentrated on in this country. You would think it's an easy sell to say, well, this movie is full of stunts and hijinks. And I personally don't think the stunts are super fantastic in this film. But the advertising is focusing largely on Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt and saying, look at these two lighting up the screen together. And in my humble opinion, they are not Bogart and Bacall.
No.
It's not fair to compare any contemporary actor, I suppose, to those two. And to have and have not, which is their kind of screen debut together. It's that is the template for kind of smouldering on-screen chemistry. Any film you compare to that is going to come up short.
Yeah.
But I do think the characters in this film kind of don't really go anywhere. I'm not sure they sort of learn anything. Do they have a kind of great revelation? Do they mature or discover something about themselves? I mean, not really. In fact, it doesn't surprise me that the film is based on a TV show, because it felt, leaving the cinema, like I could have watched a big episode of a TV, and it more or less ends up with the characters kind of in the same place where they were when the film started. It's like the pieces reset for another adventure next week.
Fall Guy 2.
Yeah.
As I said, and I don't mean this seriously, this is ironically, it's perfectly fine.
They should put that on the box.
I think you've already stumbled onto something. I don't know if you want to talk about it now or if you want to talk about it later. Do you want to spoil? Or
should we spoil?
No.
We should spoil.
I'm going to interject right now.
Yeah, okay. Interject away.
I'm commandeering this like a stuntman takes over the scene. I think you're right. Like the scenes that they're supposed to be Bogart and Bacall are so poorly written compared to all the stunts. This is all based on the action, so that the story, when they're supposed to be really charismatic and there's supposed to be chemistry all over the screen, those scenes are really not very strong at all. And that's why it's just a stunt film about stunt actors, and I think that's what it's supposed to be. It's sort of this pie-on to these under-recognized actors in the industry.
My understanding is that most of those, or many of those scenes, are improvised.
Oh.
And so it is a kind of like, it's a modern way of making a film, isn't it? That you just point the cameras at the actors and you kind of just get them to say cute things and keep saying cute things until you've got enough to make a 5-minute scene.
Okay. So
this may explain why those first scenes feel poorly written. It's because they weren't really written at all.
I've got a bugbear about this film, and the companion with whom I saw this film didn't sympathize with me. I think this is an anti-writer film. Well, it's not supposed to be about the writers, but there's this undercurrent of writer hate here. So let's talk about that later too.
Well, we'll ring the spoiler bell, because we're kind of. I mean, is it possible to spoil a film where kind of most of the events are a guy jumps out of a car, then he jumps out of another car, then he jumps out of another car? I mean, but we'll ring the bell. We'll ring the bell.
Ring that stupid bell so that I can speak my mind.
Right, that was loud and unexpected. Okay, right. What I wrote in my little kind of notes here, I said the film it most reminds me of is The Nice Guys. Have you seen that?
Which one again? I'm sorry.
The Nice Guys. It's a Shane Black film from 2017. So Ryan Gosling is in that with Russell Crowe. It's a kind of sort of buddy comedy, written and directed by Shane Black. Or sort of, say Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, or even The Last Boy Scout. I mean, all those Shane Black films. If this film feels to me a bit like a Shane Black cover version.
Oh, wow.
I wouldn't be surprised whether Shane Black actually took a turn at some rewrites even.
Oh, wow.
But I think the difference is that usually those Shane Black films, so they're kind of, they're usually full of good gags, quite a bit of action. Things keep moving, but they're quite tight on plot. Events all dovetail together neatly. Everything kind of adds up generally in a Shane Black film. Whereas I after thinking about this film for a few minutes after we left, this film has more plot holes in it than there are bullet holes in Tom Ryder's apartment at the end of the film. There are a lot of holes in this film. And plot holes are not the most important thing, and I can enjoy a movie that has plot holes in. But sometimes, these are plot holes big enough to drive, a crane through.
Well, keep driving. I say keep driving.
So what I was asking myself was, what is the bad guy's plan in this film? Because it's just tremendously convoluted and complicated. So they have this idea that spoiler, Tom Ryder has accidentally killed his new stunt double in a kind of drug fueled party trick, and so the idea is they're going to set up Colt Seaver to take the fall for it. And very early on in the film, we get Chekhov's face scanner. So they make this big thing about, you're having your face scanned so that we can put your face on someone else's body. And surprise, surprise, that comes back later. But as far as the plot of the film goes, well, that's the end of the film. Once they've scanned his face, he doesn't even need to come to Australia, barely. They can then fake the video and make it look like somebody else killed the stunt guy, and there it's all done. But instead, we have 90 convoluted minutes of kind of this way, that way. There's this kind of stunt guy who gets killed, but there are literally hundreds of witnesses to this murder at this party, and what's happening to them? Has anybody missed the dead stuntman? Isn't somebody looking for him? He's kind of sort of disappeared a bit. There's this kind of dog walker, Tom's PA, and she sort of turns up out of nowhere, walking a dog, and then we never see her again. And Colt keeps the dog. How come? Like nobody misses the dog? I don't understand. It feels to me like there are just lots and lots of big gaping holes in this movie. I mean, there's this big plot point where Colt finds this dead body in the hotel, and then he goes to get the police, and the police go to the hotel room, and the body has been moved. There's nothing there. And then half an hour later, we get a TV report about how the police are investigating the body that was found at the hotel, but you showed us that the police couldn't find the body and it had been moved. None of this kind of quite adds up, and I feel like surely somebody editing the film must have taken 2 steps back and realised, wait a second, none of that makes sense. I think the idea is that are they just trusting the audience to wait for the next car explosion and not ask too many questions?
Exactly. I think that's definitely the plan. That's why I didn't like this film, is because it was really just blatantly about blowing stuff up and people doing stunts and taking a lot of screen time to do that, and then spitting out these little bits of the story that I think they were spread out in such a way that it didn't matter that they didn't connect because you'd forgotten about them because you'd been through 12 or 13 minutes of stunts in between those scenes and those pieces. So it's not good. You're right, but it's perfectly fine. People are going to like it. Makes people happy.
I'm going to kind of go back to I'm prepared to put up with plot holes. And here, the film is supposedly being sold on its sort of romance. But I'm going to go back to that again for a minute because it's a traditional thing for a romantic movie to have a meet cute.
Yeah.
And the challenge is always, can you write a kind of a new meet cute, something that we haven't seen before? But this film is I feel like this film has 200 meet cutes, and somebody's decided that a meet cute, that is the entire substance of a romantic plot. Mm-hmm. If you just put meet cute after meet cute after meet cute, that's what constitutes romance. It's like the kind of the Tinder version of a movie romance somehow. Yeah. You just keep swiping and you enjoy the next scene. So I stopped counting the meet cutes after a while. I made a list here. They have a meet cute on set before Colt's accident, and they have a meet cute on the beach when he turns up to be the stuntman again. Yep. They have a meet cute with the loud hailers while they're shooting a fight. They have another meet cute in the parked truck that night. Yeah. Then they have a meet cute at the hotel with the unicorn in the background. Then they have a meet cute with a split screen conversation where you can see both of them on screen at once. It just goes on and on and on. It's like they do sort of feel improvised, which kind of means that these kind of meet cutes, they just sort of jump backwards and forwards in tone and pace, and they sort of feel aimless. It sounds like 2 people generating material until the director tells them to stop. And I'm sure Ryan Gosling and Emily Blunt, they're both charming in their own way, and I'm sure they're lovely people, and I'm sure they're tremendously attractive in the flesh, and well done for them. But I just felt that their scenes seem just kind of empty and unconvincing. I'm gonna go back to that Bogart and Bacall thing, which is like, if two people are so right for each other, occasionally they just shut up and look into each other's eyes, don't they?
Sure.
It's hard to kiss someone when they won't stop talking, but there aren't really any looks and glances in this film. They just keep gabbing at each other constantly. If you really like something, you just stare at them, in open-mouthed admiration every now and then. But no, there's not much of that. It's just talk.
Well, I think also all the meet cutes are essentially rendered irrelevant because in the very first scene, we know that they're already get together, and we get it's voiceover
Yes.
too. There's just a bunch of voiceover at the beginning, and then it sort of disappears until the very end, and then Colt comes back to wrap it all up for us conveniently, though it's been wrapped up all on its own. So they're just unimportant. It's true that there's no growth in the relationship because they constantly go from one meet cute to another, and we know that they're going to end up together at the end, but we have to endure. Ooh, what was this? This was over. I think this was maybe just 2 hours, something.
I think it's pretty close to exactly 2 hours.
Felt a little longer than that, but yeah, as I said, I think the scenes where they're supposed to be cute or you're supposed to be Bogart and Bacall they just don't work for me. The split screen one is just terrible because this self-awareness. Oh, we're in a film. We're talking about making a film that needs a third act. And that's, again, where the writer disrespect comes in. I'm sure there was a third act. Maybe they should have filmed this third act that they claimed didn't exist, and they might have had a better film. But it's just, it's they're talking about their own relationship. It happens, and it's already happened in an earlier scene, which at first is really quite clever. They're sort of just getting back together. She's having him set on fire again and again as part of the stunt. He doesn't need to be set on fire that many times, but he is. And they're passing this megaphone back and forth and having this emotive discussion in front of the whole crew. And it's good at first, but after 5 or 6 minutes of it, it's no longer good. I think that's that's what I take away from this whole film is just Americans don't get this less is more concept anymore. If this were a really pacey, funny collection of shorter scenes, they might have had a chance with it, but they just don't know when to stop. To the point where at the very end, I just kept writing in my notes, and another scene, and then one more scene, and another scene, because it just doesn't end. And it's just a matter of, you've got to realize that if you can distill your material into its finest bits, you're going to have a much better film than just sort of using everything that you liked shooting and everything you liked improvising, because it doesn't add up that way, and it just adds up to more and more and more, but not better and better and better. So there's the truck scene too. I mean, I think you really hit it on the head here, because the truck scene is also this emotive scene. It's really funny for a few minutes. It's great because he's listening to a Taylor Swift song. He's crying. She joins him in the car. I mean, at first it's really wonderful and genuine and funny. And then it just kind of goes on a little longer than it needs to. And that's the theme with this whole film.
It just goes on and on. I do have a bit of a question about, when is this film set? Is this film set today?
There are phones, right? We see cell phones. So, your last 20 years at most. I think it is set today.
I guess it must be. It's confused me because Colt wears, he kind of wears this Miami Vice jacket.
How could he be on that show?
Yeah, and I did look it up, and you know what? There was a live Miami Vice show. I had to look it up, which ran at Universal Studios from 1989 until 1995.
Okay.
So and he kind of says, well, that was my first ever gig. So even if he worked on the very last year of it, that was 30 years ago. Yeah. So he has to be like late 40s at the very, very least. If he was on the Miami Vice TV show, then he's probably going to be 60 or something, isn't he? Probably at least. And the other thing which really, really stood out to me is the films that they keep talking about. Yeah. I started making a list. They talk about The Fugitive, Last of the Mohicans, Notting Hill, Love Actually, Pretty Woman. It started made me think, kind of, was Colt Seavers cryogenically frozen in 1996? Yeah. And then thawed out for this film? It's like there's not a single nod to a film made in the 21st century. There's no Marvel, no Twilight, no Fast and the Furious, no Batman. It does make you kind of think, well, if this film has been in development for 20 years, did they just shoot the script that was written 20 years ago?
Quite possibly.
And nobody realised, all these references are a bit old. Yeah.
It's definitely written by people our age, James, maybe even
Oh, we mean the very best
older.
kind of writers. You're right. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But no, this is another reason I hate peppering scripts with references to other movies and other things, because you're basically admitting that your film has a shelf life of maybe another 5 or 10 years. So, and it does date it. In this film, it does date it. And they quote liberally from those films. It's not that just that they mention it, but there are quotes, that's kind of the gag that he has with his friend Dan, who's the stunt film director on this film, and they've worked together for years. They quote a lot of films together, so they're actually using dialogue, and I think you have something called a quote bank somewhere here.
Ah.
I mean, you'd fill that quote bank up with stuff that came out of this film. So it is dated. Yeah, it's funny. It's just it is a peculiar piece of work.
I will visit the quotation bank in a minute.
Okay.
But I'm going to just kind of ask that old screenwritery film. We've sat through 2 hours of this film. What is it about? What do you think it's really about?
Well, you mentioned earlier that the producer, Gail, played by Hannah Waddingham, I think, she says exactly that all her films are about getting punished again and again, and then getting right back up and doing the next thing, facing the next problem, overcoming it. And I think, again, this is a film about stunt actors. It's a stunt film about stunt actors. I don't think it goes beyond that. I mean, it's a very light, L-I-T. It's perfectly fine. This film is perfectly fine. It's a light film. I think there's something about love, and that if it doesn't work at first, keep just dragging it out and keep talking and talking and talking. This film is about self-therapy and relationship coaching or self-coaching. They have all those scenes where they talk about their feelings, even though they're talking about something else, like where you're writing a third act or the character motivations in the script. So it's about people staying together through emotive discussion.
I wrote down just 5 words. What is it about? Get back on the horse.
Oh, much better than what I said.
That's kind of what it is. But I could sort of buy into that more if it permeated every bit of the film, but I feel like it doesn't. I feel like this film is a long chain of missed opportunities. Right at the early in the film, Colt, he breaks his back, and we see him doing his physio and taking his painkillers, and I was assuming that he was going to really struggle with the stunts and really struggle with keeping going. Many years ago, I wrote a pitch for a movie called X Fix. Where at the beginning of the movie, there's this big action scene, and your kind of lead character, your hero, your detective, it gets involved in this massive accident. He catches the bad guys, but at the 15-minute point, he's got all the baddies, and he gets taken to hospital. And it's that scene that you always see at the end of most movies, where the ambulance turn up and they take him off. And he spends the rest of the movie in external fixation. So he's got this massive kind of external metal frame around the lower half of his body. So he's got very, very little mobility. And then the guys that he wronged, or the gang that he put in prison, well, some of them come back to try and get him. And now he's not the big hero because he's almost immobile. And I kind of thought, this is a great idea for a film where you show how capable someone is, and then you take it away for most of the film. And then that shows you what their character really is like.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, oh, great, well, this film is going to explore a bit of that. Colt Sievers is this, big action guy, but, he's injured now and he's got a bad back, and this is going to be a real challenge and a real struggle for him. But actually, none of it is a challenge or a struggle, and he's just as limber as he was before his accident. With
no training. He was doing some home self-care, I guess, but yeah, he had a 250 fall, breaks his back, and then within a year and a half, he's doing the same stuff again. Which doesn't seem so smart in terms of longer-term planning for retirement and such, but it also just doesn't seem realistic at all. I agree with you there.
Yes, get back on the horse and learn nothing. That's the theme of the movie.
I'll ask you one question. Why does Tom Ryder have a posse that is very well-armed, gun-toting, murderous American dudes in Australia with him? It's just, that was a very strange thing to me, that these guys are suddenly just escalated to, we're going to put machine guns all over apartments and all over your bodies. We're terrible shots. That's my cliche for the week. We're terrible shots, but we are going to try and kill you, and we're going to pour gasoline on you and set you on fire because that's been set up in an earlier part of the film. It's bizarre. Like an actor would, I don't think, ever have that kind of posse following around, and they're so evil so fast. It's very uneven.
It's weird, but it's almost like if that was all happening in Los Angeles, and there was some kind of sort of big drug gang connection, you kind of think, maybe I could sort of somehow make that connection. But the fact that the whole movie happens in Australia seems like such an afterthought.
Yeah.
It feels like an extremely non-Australian movie, apart from the contractual obligation to show the Sydney Opera House at least 5 times every half hour. But it feels like this whole movie should be happening in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And then at the very last minute, there was a tax break if they shot in Australia. So they moved it over there.
Very possibly. Because I think Australia has very tight gun laws, and that just wouldn't happen with the Aussies. Down under? No, absolutely. I also took issue with, this film seems to be skewering Hollywood at times, but it ends up just going very Hollywood and really, really too Hollywood. So it sort of loses that sort of ironic and satirical component pretty fast. And I didn't like that. I felt like this could have been a much more original film, but I think maybe you're just following source material so closely, or you're just trying to really put in gag after gag and stunt after stunt that you're not really worried about whether anything rings true. It doesn't feel like a very authentic film to me in any ways. It feels like it's commercial. It's an intellectual property for sure. And we might get a Fall Guy too, based on how well it does.
It doesn't surprise me that it comes from the director of John Wick, because John Wick is basically a series of set pieces stitched together, and that's kind of what this film is. And it's like a little bit self-conscious about set pieces, because the characters doing the set pieces are people who do set pieces for films. So it's like set pieces within set pieces. I've got one deposit for the quotation bank.
Oh, okay.
Quotation bank. That moment when we get a character who reiterates the theme of the film. It's his best friend Dan, who says it's about how many times you can get hit and keep moving forward. Which is like it's like not only is he stating the film, but he's like stating the theme. He's pitching the whole film there, isn't he? Basically,
yeah.
It's like if you had to compress the story of the entire 2-hour picture into 11 words, those are the 11 words you would choose
to remind the audience why you're watching and what's the message you're supposed to take away. I thought I had a couple of quotes, and some of them were just from other films, but he also comes to this realization that Jodie is the one for him. I don't think he ever really doubts it, but then he sort of confirms it for himself. He says, she's been the sexy bacon all along. I think it comes from Gail. She's talking about these... Is it a wiener or hot dog that's wrapped in bacon to make it sexy? Like the sausage itself is not very sexy, but the bacon around it makes it sexy. So he's talking about Jodie, and he says she's been the sexy bacon all along. Good writing. That's good writing.
That's good.
No, but I think the quote that really also again jumps out for me was, I think it was the drug dealer in the club that says to Colt, asks Colt, do they have an Oscar for stunts? Which I think kind of is, again, what this film is about. It's a little push for a bit more recognition, a bit more respect for these actors. And I think it's said later, too. I think it comes up again later, whether or not there's an Oscar. What are there awards for stunts?
I should say, that's probably the right time to bring it up, that we do have the return of the Too Real book club this week.
Oh, my God.
Because I read the book.
What?
There is not a book of the Fall Guy. But to prepare for the pod, I did read The True Adventures of the World's Greatest Stuntman by Vic Armstrong.
Oh.
So this is like the definitive stuntman book. I've had it for a while, and I thought I should read that for this week. So Vic Armstrong is the stuntman who he used to double for Harrison Ford for all of his pictures. And he's done all of the Indiana Jones films, lots of the Bond films, lots of the Paul Verhoeven films. He's done, like lots and lots of those kind of 80s, 90s, 2000s films. He directed a lot of Second Unit. So he's like a real legendary figure in the stunt world. And I have to say, I think this might possibly be the most boring book I have ever read in my life.
How? How could it be boring?
It's like, in The Shining, Jack Nicholson, he types out this 400-page book, and on every page it says, all work and no play make Jack a dull boy, or whatever. Basically, this book is exactly the same, only the phrase that he types out is, I fell off a horse. It's just a really dull, sort of factual, unnuanced, boring book. He just kind of lists all these stunts that he did. So it's like somebody's diary where they haven't written about their thoughts and their ambitions and their worries and their fears. They've just said, "Oh, we did this stunt. We jumped off that bridge. I landed in some boxes." He meets like loads of famous people, and every single one of them is a great bloke. There was a great. I met Pierce Brosnan. He's a great bloke. I met Arnold Schwarzenegger. He's a great bloke. He's a great bloke. And then these kind of weird whiplash changes in tone as well that really kind of stand out. Like there'll be a bit where he'll describe some terrible accident that happens on set, and and things go wrong, and one of the extras is decapitated. This guy got his head cut off. It was terrible, but these things happen on stage.
Oh, God.
Later, we had an incredible meal, and Schwarzenegger invited us to play golf. He's a great bloke. It's like it's just. This kind of real whiplash change is just mad. It's amazing how you can turn something as exciting as a lifetime working in stunts into a book that is quite that boring.
Did he have a ghost writer, or did he write it himself?
I can't imagine that he didn't have a ghost writer, but he must have got the cheapest one going, I think.
Wow.
Probably maybe the book impressed me about as much as The Fall Guy did.
Ooh, wow. That's low praise, I believe.
Speaking of low... Yes?
I was just going to say, I loved the Kiss song. That's one of my favorite Kiss songs, I think. I Was Made for Loving You keeps coming up again and again. They sort of recycle it in different tempos. And so I like that in the film.
Are you clutching at straws now by any chance?
I think I am. I'm sorry. I'm stepping out. I'm stepping away from the mic. You go.
Well, all I was going to suggest was there is a little mid-credit scene at the end of the film where the police turn up, which I missed because we had to dash off to get home for the dog sitter. But I think we should have our own mid-credit scene where we call our own squad to try and tidy things up. Let's phone the Cliche Squad.
Cliche Squad.
Masterful segue, by the way.
That was seamless, wasn't it? How seamless. I think the Cliche Squad are going to have a lot of work to do this week, though. They've got a lot to clear up. Yeah. I have written quite a list of cliches, but the one I've got on top is called songs that are called on the nose.
Yeah.
There's a lot of characters listening to overly appropriate songs.
Yeah.
There's because he's in the truck and he's listening to this Taylor Swift song.
Yeah.
The song is All Too Well, but like the film, the song could be called "I Split Up with Someone and Now I Regret It."
Yeah.
Because that's kind of you're exactly what's happening in the scene, and that's what's happening in the lyrics. And then later on, like there's a karaoke scene, and Jodie is singing this Phil Collins song "Against All Odds."
Yeah, Against All Odds.
Take a look at me now.
Yeah.
But the song might as well be called "My Ex-Boyfriend is a Stuntman Who is Surfing on a Piece of Skit Behind a Speeding Truck," because it's just so very, very on the nose.
It is, and I feel that comes from, is that an Australian film, Against All Odds?
Oh, I think it might be.
I think there are a lot of, again,
yes.
I think this film is full of references, and then, of course, it's Phil Collins, and she says, take a look at me now. Jodie, we probably haven't mentioned this, she starts out as a camera operator, and this is her first directing gig. But yes, totally on the nose. And I think that's another one of these things where if the writing's not there, you're asking the music and the lyrics to do something that you wouldn't normally do if you were writing good pictures and good visuals and telling a story in other ways.
The other cliches I wrote down, the black best friend who isn't in any way someone's actual friend. So, supposedly Dan is his best friend, but they don't actually particularly hang out together or do anything. It's just that... Yeah. The nefarious interfering movie producer I feel like, if you ever see a movie producer in a film, that's the only kind of movie producer that exists, isn't it? There's only one kind of movie producer. And my favorite, I'm particularly proud of this. I hope you will enjoy this. The final cliche I wrote on my list is Dog Ex Machina. Because
I think it would be Canis Ex Machina.
Oh, Canis Ex Machina. Yeah, that is better, actually. You're right, yes. Oh, you trump me with your superior linguistic knowledge again. But yeah, the number of times that they're so delighted with this dog who's been trained to bite people on the nuts that this dog turns up and bites people on the nuts at least 7 times, I think.
Yeah.
Just keeps coming back and bite people on the nuts. And they were so delighted with that gag, they keep zooming in on, oh, look, here's the dog that bites people in the nuts again.
He does. He munches a number of nuts. Because he's munching in 2s, presumably, as well. So, ooh, those are some good cliches. For me, bad shooting. I mean, I don't know how these guys miss. You've got a seriously automatic weapon, and I think it's wise to go with less weaponry if you're going to have people missing bullets. It should be a gun that's notoriously bad or can't fire. Bring out a musket. Give me a musket with a bayonet on it, for Christ's sake. Terrible shooting, but again, it's a posse. You'd think posse's usually your drinking buddies, but he has this very mad and bad shooting posse. Self-aware films. I think we're starting to see that where, they talk about the filmmaking or the writing and the act structure and the relationships within the film. And I think this is quickly becoming a cliche. We've seen it in American fiction, it was more relevant there. I think it was well used there because it's someone writing a book, in the course of the film. But Nick Cage's film last year, what was it called? The Unbearable Burden of Amazing Talent or whatever. Talking about act structure and talking about what the characters are doing. So you're almost watching these films of films being made and people talking about them being made as they make them. Just getting a little tedious. I think there's a bizarre cliche emerging around, I guess, the rich and famous. And like, why does Tom Ryder have this gorgeously appointed apartment in Australia if he's an American actor and he's got all of his belongings there?
Yeah.
And the thing that really bugged me about it was when he first goes into that, I think it's that apartment, you see this big yacht right next to it. And immediately I said, okay, Tom Ryder's hiding out on that yacht right there. You're like teasing us by putting it right in front of us, but no, of course not. He's lost in Sydney somewhere, and he just happens to have all of his famous artifacts and blank guns from movies and swords and things and all his props are here in Australia for some reason. So I think it's kind of this cliche of just writing very simply for caricature or something like that. You're just trying to give the information about the character, and it's not really very well done or very valid, I don't think, but those are some things that I'm seeing emerging. But yeah, I think this is trying to poke fun, I think, at Hollywood in some ways, but it's this bizarre level of self-aware where it doesn't do it very well, and then it just falls into all those traps and kind of becomes a parody of itself, this film, after a while.
Yeah. They're poking fun at Hollywood, but because of tax breaks, they're not actually making the film in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the barely adequate, just about okay Fall Guy. Shall we have a break? We'll sweep up some of the broken glass, put some filler in the bullet holes, and then we will come back and talk about not the Fall Guy, but just the full stop from 2006.
That sounds perfectly fine for me. To beer or not to beer? Is that a question? Duh. Beer, of course. Drink beer. This ad was brought to you by the International Beer Brewers Association, which reminds you to please drink more beer, but please drink responsibly.
They're my favourite sponsors so far.
Yeah, they're good. I think they're right to the point. That nonsense.
I think the beer they delivered only got sent to your address, though. I don't seem to have got any.
It's pretty good again.
And we are back. I seem to have inexplicably lost the beer which our sponsor sent. So I'm going to have to go hunting for that. We are going to talk about a film from 2006, so relatively recent, the oldie this time. It's not often we have an oldie from the 21st century.
That's true.
It is The Fall, which I had never seen.
Oh, good. I've only seen it one time in the theater.
Nice.
What is that? Prince Charles Theater on just off of Leicester Square or something?
Leicester Square. Was that on its initial release or was it a rerun?
It must have been. I think I saw it probably 2006 or 2007. I think it allegedly came out in 2006. I'm not sure if it came to the States. I wasn't living here at the time. I mean, it must have had some theatrical experience here, but it's hard to find, right? I mean, I hate to admit this on the pod, but I didn't watch a fully legal version of this. So as much as we can talk about whether we recommend it or not, but if you want to see it, it ain't easy. It doesn't stream anywhere. It wasn't at my library on DVD. I had to reach out to, quotation marks, a friend with connections, and I got a link somehow.
Interestingly, in the UK, it's available for free on YouTube.
Oh, God.
Which is that kind of standard sign of a film where the distributors have either lost interest in it, or someone's contract has expired and it's not entirely clear who it belongs to. So it's been up for free on YouTube for some years, I think, in this country, and nobody has asked to take it down.
Interesting. Well, I think I must have gotten just on YouTube, and it would sort of come up, but then it wouldn't play. It would say, "This is not available in your territory."
Right. Okay. So it's clearly so there's kind of some kind of UK distribution contract which has expired.
Yeah.
But somebody still owns the rights in the US. I'm guessing that's what it is.
Yeah. So this is a film that it just seemed like a very obvious choice, knowing that The Fall Guy was coming out, because this is called The Fall, not Guy. No Guy there. I think his name is Roy, actually. But also, it's a very distinct film. I'm glad you saw it. I don't know if you liked it or not. We'll talk about that. But it's a very, very original and very, very distinct film. I had never seen anything quite like it, and I was very happy to see it in the theater. So this time I saw it on a very small screen, but it was still effective.
So it's directed by Tarsem Singh, although he credits himself just as Tarsem.
Tarsem, yeah.
On all the credits for this. So he made The Cell, Jennifer Lopez movie, which is visually pretty crazy, which I have seen in the past. And good fun and pretty watchable.
Yeah.
He made Mirror Mirror, which I have not seen, which is a Julia Roberts picture, I think. A movie called Self/Less, which surely must be the sequel to Face/Off. I don't know. I haven't seen that. I don't know what it's about.
Yeah.
I did look up on the internet. This film cost $30 million to make. And it made $3 million at the box office.
Wow.
So this may be one of the reasons why it's not easy to see, because people don't want to throw good money after bad.
It was $30 million well spent, because these guys, whoever the main crew was, they traveled all over the world. I think it was just like a buddy holiday. Hey, let's make a film, but let's go to Turkey and Jordan and Africa and Spain, and we're just going to go everywhere.
And you can watch, there's two behind-the-scenes documentaries. They're half an hour each on YouTube. Again, in the UK, you can watch them for free on YouTube.
Okay.
And it does demonstrate there is virtually no CGI or green screen in this movie. It's all shot on location.
Yeah.
All those places, they exist or they built them.
Yeah.
They are real. All the hundreds of fighters and soldiers in these kind of bizarre black uniforms are real guys wearing real outfits that were really made. It's all done for real. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, because it really precedes, I think, one of the stages of tremendous advance in CGI. So it's an accomplishment. I think this film is definitely an accomplishment. I didn't see The Cell. I feel like it came out before this film.
I think it did come out before this film.
And I remember seeing the trailers, and I thought, I can't take Jennifer Lopez seriously yet, and it just looks weird and stupid. So I never saw that film, but maybe I will go back and see it after seeing The Fall again.
See, it's very watchable. I'm not a massive fan of Jennifer Lopez, although if you see her in that Steven Soderbergh film with George Clooney, what's that called? Out of Sight. That's it. Out of Sight.
Yeah. Yep.
She is good in that. You know, so she can.
Yeah. Oh, she's talented. I believe. That's why I'm thinking maybe I should go back and give that one a chance. Tarsem also did videos. He comes out of a very visual background, I think. He did REM's "Losing My Religion" video. And an interesting video by Suzanne Vega called "Tired of Sleeping." I'm tired of being tired of sleeping, I think it's called. So he great visual style. I think this is a guy who knows how to put a picture on film. I imagine this was shot on film too, but it's possibly right on the edge of being somewhat digital.
It's just predates digital, doesn't it?
Screenplay was Dan Gilroy, who wrote brother of Tony Gilroy, I believe, who wrote Bourne Legacy and Nightcrawler. I think it's a film with Jake Gyllenhaal that came out a few years ago. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think he directed Nightcrawler as well. If you haven't seen Nightcrawler, that's a fantastic
that is a
film.
pretty interesting film. I did like that. It's kind of creepy, nice and creepy.
Yeah.
And then another credit on it is Nikos Sultanakis, who also wrote The Cell. So he's working with some people at least one person he'd worked with before.
Yeah, I think that guy is Tarson's regular collaborator.
And you said 30 million. That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly spent on airplanes and travel and probably some very good food. But they came away with a very interesting film. Shall I tell you about it?
Oh, yes, please.
This is a film that features Lee Pace as Roy, a stuntman, and a young actress named, Katinka Untaro, who plays Alexandria. Opening scene, I just say, wow. It's a credit sequence. It opens on a man emerging from water.
Yep.
We don't know too much about it. But this scene is shot in black and white. I think it's the only part of the film that's entirely black and white. It's set to brilliant use of Beethoven's Seventh Symphony, the second movement, the Allegretto, which is just perfect. I think this opening is just perfect cinema. It's just, it teases you a little bit. There's this black and white footage of, and I think we're supposed to associate that man coming out of the water there. There's been some sort of train incident where it stops on a bridge, and then they're trying to fish some people out of the water, and there's a horse in the water as well. And eventually it kind of appears that we're on a film shoot. So it gets a little bit of meta feeling here. And these two stuntmen, I assume, are kind of drowning or swimming around in the water. There's this beautiful shot of a lariat going down, throwing in, and you can see the shadow on the water as it drops. But the thing they say
I'm going to stop you there. You're going to have to explain to me what a lariat is.
Oh, a lariat, like a lasso. It's like a long rope. So they're throwing him a lifeline. They're throwing the stuntman a lifeline of some sort.
So a lariat is like a long piece of rope with a hoop at the end.
Oh, yeah. It's cowboy talk.
Now, how do you know that?
Howdy, because I live in the United States. We got cowboy. Do you have cowboy?
Oh, of course. Yes.
They're throwing a lifeline to these guys, but they end up really working on the horse. And the thing they save is a horse. They're lifting this horse out of the water at the end. And it all pieces together because we kind of learned throughout the story that this is a scene where Roy has injured himself trying to kind of impress, I think, maybe the actress who's on the film. And that lands him in the hospital. So most of this film takes place at this sort of rehabilitation center in a beautiful part of, I assume, California. We're near orange orchards and palm trees. And there's this young girl, Alexandria, and this is an amazing performance by a child actor. I thought she might be 8 or 9 years old. I don't know. She has a very distinct accent. I'm going to say maybe Turkey or Syria, somewhere Eastern Europe.
I looked it up. Yeah. I think she might be Hungarian.
Hungarian, okay. I was in the right neighborhood.
If anybody wants to email in and tell me, no, I've got that wrong. I didn't write it down. I just looked it up, so I could remember wrong.
Yeah, and the name is Katinka Untaro. She is delightful. She has this broken arm in this film, kind of propped up. So she's rehabilitating too, and she's in like a children's wing, and she sort of sends this message to one of her favorite nurses on paper. She throws it downstairs, and it ends up in Roy's bed. So Roy is the recuperating stuntman. He's recovering from this fall, and they end up striking up a friendship where she wants to listen to his stories. He's telling stories. He starts out with this story about Alexander the Great. She hates it. They regroup the next day, and he gets a different story, and he basically sees that she has a penchant maybe for stealing things. She has this little box of treasures. She's wonderfully mischievous, but she's just very engaging. And we were talking about a little bit about improvising scenes in the other film. I feel like some of this has to be improvised, but either that or she's just a brilliant actress who really knew the script perfectly. It's amazing. They work very well together.
They cover that in the behind the scenes.
That's right.
Films that you can watch on YouTube, actually. I think they are feeding her the lines one at a time.
Oh, wow.
And then she's just kind of saying them in a few different ways. And which I think is why her performance feels very fresh. So it's not particularly rehearsed. They tell her what to say, and she just says it.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And then they get her to kind of do it a few different ways, and then they cut together stuff from that.
It's fantastic.
That is how they've done it, I think.
Yeah.
Though interestingly, if I was the director, I don't think I would release that behind the scenes footage, because Tarsem seems to do an awful lot of shouting at Katinka until she cries.
Oh no! Oh my God!
So I think so, a lot of her tears in the film are actually genuine, because he's just being really nasty to her. If I was the director, I wouldn't show anyone this behind the scenes stuff. It's a little bit uncomfortable to watch, but it is a very authentic feeling performance. I think, because it is quite authentic.
It is, but it comes at the expense of child abuse, doesn't it? I mean.
Well, I felt a little bit uncomfortable, and I was slightly worrying about her welfare on the set. Oh my God! And it's not like you can say, well, that was 2006; it was a different era. Yeah. This wasn't very long ago.
Oh God, James! Just to speak to our listeners, please don't watch whatever James is telling you to watch or share.
Yeah, I sort of wished I hadn't watched it, actually.
Oh my God! Yeah. No, because it's otherwise it's a tremendous performance, and they really strike up this relationship that becomes sort of, he tells her stories in exchange for her going to steal some morphine for him. It's not clear how much pain he's in, but he is sort of bedbound or bedridden. And at one point you think maybe he really wants the morphine to end his life. But he does spin this tale about Governor Odious, who basically is a very transparent version of the actor who I think ended up with the woman that he loved on the movie set where they're making the film together. And 5 or 6 people who have been hard done by Governor Odious, all who want to kill him. So he starts telling this just fantastic tale to Alexandria. And I think what we end up seeing is Alexandria interpreting it, and we sort of see her vision. So there's this film in her head that plays out, which is absolutely cinematic and beautiful and epic. But we're really seeing it through how she's understanding Roy's storytelling.
I was trying to figure out a way to describe this fantasy story, which is sandwiched inside the Fall. And the first thing I wrote down was, this is the Homoerotic Avengers. It's like five heroes, and they're wearing these brightly coloured costumes. Yeah. But at least a couple of them not wearing very much.
Yeah, exactly.
And then later on, I wrote, this is the Guardians of the Galaxy as filmed by Robert Mapplethorpe. That's what I wrote. Yeah. There is even a man who is a tree man who kind of emerges from a tree, isn't there? It does kind of feel like it's almost like a fever dream that you would have after watching a few Marvel movies. Yeah, but with more nudity. Yes, there is quite a lot of nudity.
Yeah, it's. I would think this is a surreal film in many ways. It just feels so crazy, but it's impressive that all of this was done without green screen technology, because there's some scenes of just like a horseback rider galloping through the desert, and all you see is like this massive pile of sand, but there's this little thin strip of blue sky, or vice versa, and it's just so wonderfully done. It's so visual, and they're great pictures. It's just great filmmaking. I think a lot of the energy goes into that story that really is Alexandria's in imagination, but I think Roy tells a pretty good story too. So you are caught in this weird world of you're getting the whole story sort of told to you and shown to you at the same time. And normally that wouldn't work. I really kind of responded really well to it, because in part she's helping him edit the story a little bit, because she'll interject very often, and their voices become sort of the characters' voices of the film that she's imagining, I guess, or the story that she's imagining. There's a lot of wonderful sort of trickery that makes the story very engaging, and just their relationship also makes it very engaging.
I mean, it's not surprising that this is a film made by someone who has directed 200 ads. Yeah, because it has that kind of that visual sense of creating an impactful image that that strikes you immediately. It's like a series of very impactful images.
Yeah.
And you may well say, any one 30-second period of this film, is pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
Do all those 30-second periods run together to form a cohesive, coherent story? I mean, more or less. It more or less sticks together.
Yeah.
But it does look like the things that he's really interested in are these 30-second moments.
Yeah.
But they are terrific. There's nothing else that quite looks like this film.
No, not at all.
In fact, so much I'm gonna dip into the quotation bank here. Actually,
Ooh. Oh, please.
Quotation bank. Only because I think we are allowed to deposit in the quotation bank not just dialogue, but also movie quotes.
Oh, good.
So I think this film, it does quote from, I wrote down Peter Greenaway, who's not a name that you hear very often these days, but he made all those fabulously symmetrical films in the 80s and the 90s.
Yeah.
It clearly quotes from Baron Munchausen.
Yeah.
It quotes from the De Chirico paintings, I think. So now this is a part of what this kind of surreal imagery comes from. I think it's it's going back to some of the original surreal art from early 20th century. And then also, I'm quite happy for you to touch at this. I think it quotes from the video game Ico as well, which is an old PlayStation 2 game from, 20 years ago or something like that, about a boy who has to rescue a girl from a castle, but it's got this quite remarkable stone architecture,
wow,
which is sort of the centerpiece of the game. And I think a lot of that style and sensibility infuses its way into this film as well. So it's quoting widely from a whole bunch of different visual sources.
Yeah.
This film is, it just feel like this film is about the storyboards. This is a film all about the storyboards.
I would also think there's some homage to David Lean in there. I mean, Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, that level of epic visual storytelling for sure.
Yes.
And it's also based on a film I've never heard of called Yo Ho Ho.
Oh.
Yeah. And I just read a little blurb about it. I think it's a Russian film. I'll have to do a little bit more research on that and maybe go see that to see how it does compare. But there are a lot of homages. I think there are homages to the old stunt films of earlier days, even like
yes,
certainly those kinds of action films, because it takes place. I probably didn't mention that, but it seems to take place in maybe the 1930s, 20s, 30s, 40s, something like that. So there's some film history behind it because Roy has been in the game for a little while, and he will go on to be a stunt person in the future, but he just won't be in love with this woman that he's lost, and he feels very, very crestfallen by it. And as I said, that you feel like he's trying to kill himself via morphine, but what ends up happening is Alexandria one night tries to procure more morphine for him, and she has a fall herself. It's another fall. And she ends up injured, and boy, you think at one point maybe she's not going to walk again. And Roy comes to her, and he's very emotional because he feels, I think, tremendous guilt, and she's sort of on the table, and the story gets super dark.
Yeah.
And the character that he plays in her imagination is sort of based on her father, and then Alexandria works herself into the story more and more. And it gets dark where he starts killing off all these characters who are going after Odious and...
it goes full on Hamlet, doesn't it? I mean, they just kill off
Just
pretty
killing
much everybody.
They're all sacrificing themselves to the point where the final confrontation is the Alexandria's father type character, this bandit who's trying to steal away Odysseus's love interest as well as kill Odious. And at one point, he's just dying. He's just drowning in a swimming pool. And Alexandria says, no, in part because it's her father. So he sort of revives himself and ends up killing Odious. But I love the fact that he doesn't end up with the nurse, Nurse Evelyn character who plays the love interest of Odious, who would ultimately be sort of the actor who stole the girl away from Roy. So they don't end up together, but they do end up watching this film and these rushes. It seems like the rushes for the film where Roy was injured come out. They're all watching them together at the hospital. It's just one of these great kind of group cinema moments. And through the magic of cinema, I liked this scene. Like, he nails the stunt because it was edited together in the way that when he jumped off that bridge and hurt himself, fell off the horse, fell into the water, or whatever happened, in the movie, it turns out perfectly. And then I think there's sort of like a voiceover thing with Alexandria where she says that she saw Roy's films and she saw they had a good career. And she's on this orange orchard back. Her arm's been rescued, or healed, or whatever caused her fall. She's recovered from that as well. And it's got this Wizard of Oz type thing where a lot of the characters that we've seen on the hospital grounds and in the orchard were actually what she used to imagine the 5 men going after Odious in her story, her film-like story in her imagination. So it's wonderfully done, and ends, surprisingly enough, on it's kind of like that other one. It was called The Fall Guy. There are images of stunt men doing great things, and you sort of assume that some of it is Roy. And then the very last image, there's this man dropping into water, and he sort of kisses the camera goodbye, and then just hits the water, and we've come full circle from that opening image of...
Yep.
I don't even know if that was Roy emerging from the water in the first shot, but I assume it was either another stunt person on that shoot, or Roy. So it does sort of come full circle. I really like this film. I do agree with you that it's not a masterpiece, and that's probably why it didn't take off and didn't make any money, but it's unique. It's entertaining. I did not yawn. I can't say a whole lot of bad things about it, so...
I did not yawn. Yes, that's another good box quote for tonight. Yes.
And to the American audiences, I would say, good luck. You're not going to find it. Sorry.
I basically kind of knew nothing about this film. I had seen the poster around, and I'd seen The Cell, but that's it. So never watched this. I did really enjoy it, and I think you are exactly right that the thing that elevates it is this performance from Cantika Untaru. Which is she's just fantastic. My little comments at the bottom of my notes. I write at the end of the day, this film isn't about much, but it says it so beautifully. Yeah. It's kind of it. Sometimes it feels to me almost like it's like a very, very lavish 80s pop video.
Yeah.
It's like I could imagine it's almost this could be something that Duran Duran would have made as a kind of sort of beautiful folly. The record company would somehow manage to give them $30 million to make like a feature-length pop video, and you would get Simon Le Bon instead taking his top off and looking moody in the desert, but not using the same sort of imagery.
Yep.
It is sumptuous and beautiful and very cleverly shot. It's just so luxurious to look at.
Yeah. And
there's nothing that really quite looks like this. And there's nothing that looks quite like this that's been made since.
True.
So tremendously enjoyable.
Yeah, I'm always very, very wary of video directors and advertisement directors making films, just because I feel like those are made for very short attention spans, and it's a very short form. They're both super short forms when you think about it. Like a video is maybe 3 to 5 minutes. Advertisements, a minute-long advertisement is a long advertisement.
Yeah.
But some of those skills are crucial to really good cinematic storytelling. I think there's fantastic cinematic storytelling here. I think it's really, there's some moments like that opening sequence I talked about, and the Beethoven's Seventh, which returns at the end of the film as well. It's incredible. I mean, just to watch the first 3 minutes, I think and you're trying to piece this story together. It's beautiful because he's giving you some information, but not enough. And then the rest of the film sort of explains that opening scene much better. So I think it's a great piece of storytelling. And I think that's kind of ultimately all it's about. I don't think it's necessarily about the friendship they have. There's something there, or heartache or anything like that. I think it's about filmmaking is just weaving this tale from available resources. And you're using just spectacular visuals. I love the idea that you're going into the mind of a child to actually see the story. And that story, I'm not completely sold on the whole Odious story. I don't think it's that engaging, really. And I think it's just Roy emoting about losing a girl to this guy he doesn't like, and getting his friends together to kill him. It's not the most interesting epic story, but it is good. It's definitely entertaining. I love the first story that she nixes. She says Alexander the Great. He's got these guys out in the desert, and someone brings him water. And instead of giving the water and equally distributing it to everyone, he dumps it out to point that they're together as a team and they're going to suffer together and whatnot. And Alexandria just says, "No, that's a stupid story. Don't tell me that story." And I love that teaser. I almost think this might have been better with a bunch of separate stories as opposed to taking us into the epic, because you get taken in and out of the story between what's happening at the hospital and what's happening in her imagination. And I think that in any film, that's definitely going to interrupt stuff. So that's why when you said it feels like a lot of things that just don't quite hang together well, I agree with you. And I think maybe if they had told it in smaller stories, it might have been more interesting and he would have had even more freedom. I mean, Tarsem's not holding back. These are big images, big shots, set piece after set piece kind of stuff. But I think maybe if he did go a little lower key on the story that she's imagining, it might have been a bit more comprehensible. And it might have been just a stronger tale.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's not really a writer's film, is it? That the best dialogue, not that writing is all about dialogue, but the best dialogue, is semi-improvised and sort of it's been kind of worked around, by an 8 or 9 year old girl, isn't it?
Yeah.
She gets the best dialogue, and it's the best dialogue because it feels just kind of quite natural and unaffected.
And she's hilarious too. I got to say, I mean, she had me just laughing. And it's a lot about delivery and about her word choice and stuff. But she's hilarious. She's great. So this has a great child actor performance. I'm so sorry that she was treated poorly. She does not have a long list of credits after that.
She does not. Yeah,
Tarsem
I think so.
Turned her off of acting. Bastard.
Well done, Hollywood, ending yet another career early. Well, at least we enjoyed one of the films tonight. A lot of different people in these films, but did you feel like any of them? Let's play my favourite game. Ooh. Who am I?
Who am I?
I gotta say, you are getting very professional at these segues.
Segues.
Oh my God. Is that not your middle name? James Segway? Ruzika? Razor Segway. Oh, I like that. That's a good one too. I'm playing Disruptor here.
Oh yeah, you are. That's your natural role.
Yeah, yep. I didn't feel much like any one character. I felt like a friendship. I felt like the friendship between Alexandria and Roy.
Nice.
Because I am both a heartbroken failed actor, maybe a more fiend, I don't know. But I also feel like a drama queen young girl who has an overactive imagination. So I'm right there. And I think that's kind of my life because I work with young people all the time. So it's like I'm a relationship. I'm not a character.
There is an 8-year-old drama queen inside all of us, isn't there?
Yes. Who are you? Who are you?
If you're going to be anything from these two films, I think that's a good one to choose. I was going to point out there are quite a lot of medics in the Fall, and none of them are very good, I think. Although I don't know. I suppose. Alexandria does survive her brain surgery, so perhaps I shouldn't dismiss them out of hand. But I didn't feel particularly like any of those medics in that film. And I know I am no genius, but I do feel a bit brighter than every single character in The Fall Guy.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure that I came away really sympathising with any of those people. So I reckon if I had to step into anybody's shoes, I would quite like to be one of the rainbow-coloured Avengers.
Oh yeah.
In The Fall, if I'm going to be one of the superhero guys, maybe I would be like the Sikh guy with the sword because he just seemed extremely cool. He had some great facial hair.
Yep.
What's not to like?
Yep.
He doesn't have very many lines, but I can do the strong and silent type. If there's anybody I would like to be, it's him.
They're smoking hot too. Handsome, well sculpted men. Yeah, good for you.
But I'm flattering myself. Well, let's see whether so. These two films almost identical. It's almost like one is a remake of the other. Let's do our synthesis. See if we can find some common ground.
They're actually, it's funny because they are very alike, but they are so different.
But it's interesting that you can create such a different treatment out of pretty similar starting ideas.
Yeah.
I'll show you what I wrote in my notes. I wrote, we love stunts, we love movies. Who wouldn't want to make a movie about movies and stunts?
Yeah.
But just like fine dining, it is more fun to eat the food than to watch how it's made.
Oh.
That felt quite profound when I wrote it. And now that I'm reading it out loud, I'm not entirely sure I know what that means. So we have these films have like two very different takes on stunt performers. And I would say, out of all the people who work in the industry, we see films about actors and we see films about film directors. We have seen films about the people who score movies recently. In fact, there were two of them last year. Yeah. It's not often that we see films about stunt performers, and yet arguably they are the ripest for basing a film on. They do exciting, daring things. They lend themselves to metaphor because you can easily talk about bravery, about daring to take the next step, about facing fear, about falling. I mean, it's ripe for metaphor.
Yeah.
You can either fall in love or fall out of favor. I mean, this stuff writes itself. Or it should, at least. You kind of think, well, why aren't there more movies about stunt people? They seem ideal. And yet, despite all that, personally, I don't think The Fall guy works. And I think The Fall does, but I'm not sure that the reason it works is because it's based on the life of a stunt person.
No, I think The Fall is much more about imagination and good storytelling. And I think it's ironic, and tell me if I'm misreading the opening scene of The Fall, but I think The Fall guy is sort of a film looking to get respect for stuntmen, or stunt actors, let's say, kind of in an on-the-nose way. They even say this at the beginning of the film, that introduction that I saw, and, this bit about, are there Oscars for that and all that. Whereas I think the opening scene of The Fall actually nails it in an image, in that horse is more important than the stuntmen who ended up in the water. They get a piece of rope and he gets this, they're using like what do you call that? It's like a boom kind of thing to lift the horse out of the water. And I think that image right there tells you what's more important. So you end up with this laugh and like, oh yeah, that's right. The horse is probably going to be more important, maybe has more insurance on it or something than the men themselves. So I think that's the point that The Fall guy could make, like these guys deserve more respect, but it's sort of like begging for it and asking for it. And yeah, sure, stunt after stunt, they sort of show that in the film, but The Fall does it in one image at the very beginning of the film. And then shows some wonderful stunts at the end of the film, and just has this very nice shape to it. So I think it does a better job of maybe the Fall guy's raison d'etre, I would say. I don't know. I mean, and I'm not sure I'm reading that opening scene properly, and I'm not sure it's even meant to be read. It's just such a wonderful cinematic trick, but.
I mean, I interpreted that opening scene just like you coming up for air somehow. But, But does that really feed into the themes of the film? I'm not sure that it does.
No, I don't. I think that's just accidental. I think it's actually part of it's just the opening. It's sort of showing you the reality of being a stuntman, and you get Roy, who doesn't feel very confident or very happy in that hospital recuperating, but he ends up, telling this pretty interesting story. He's actually a real storyteller. And I think maybe The Fall guy takes that storytelling bit out of the stunt actors, because there's just so much explosion, so much violence and set piece after set piece and chases and things like that you're not really celebrating how they tell the story. It's more like you're just showing how brave they are, how nuts they are, and how willing they are to put their lives on the line in order to sell a blockbuster. They're very different films. And obviously The Fall is not a blockbuster, didn't do very well, but it's so much more interesting. And I think it's another big difference for me in those films is the use of resources. I think great filmmaking is all about using the resources that you have when you envision a certain scenario. So like using the thing that comes to mind is you were talking about all those bizarre looking warriors in The Fall, Odious men, right? And it comes from Alexandria seeing the X-ray man in this bizarre 1930s X-ray outfit walking into a room, and she's incorporated that look. So you're using those things on the property. She's using the characters in her life to tell her story in her imagination. Whereas the Fall guy, there are these props and things. They've got the blank gun. They've got the sort of ninja sword that's actually rubber, an axe or something like that. So they're sort of using it, but it's just sort of like playing lip service. They're not really they're not talking or not showing that much about how the stuntmen are using their creativity to solve problems. It's more like it's just Ryan Gosling's either going to get Emily Blunt or not, and then we're going to see a lot of cars blow up and all sorts of sand hit the air with explosions and aliens and things like that. So it doesn't really add up as well. And I just think a good story uses the resources that the context actually gives you naturally, and then you incorporate it into that story. And that's why I think The Fall is so strong in that way. It's really using what it has to its advantage.
I mean, both of these films not only share, the notion of there's a stuntman at the center of the story, but also they both have they both use this technique of a film within a film. But there's this very big difference between the way they treat the film within the film, because The Fall really respects the film that appears within the film. That's this is the kind of the film that plays out in the imagination of the young girl, and it takes it completely seriously, and it takes us there and expects us to treat that film within a film with complete respect.
Yeah.
That's kind of where the meat of a lot of the story really happens.
Yeah.
Whereas the film within a film in The Fall Guy, both we, the audience, and the characters are all sneering at it, basically. Yeah. I mean, the idea is that we are all supposed to be laughing at how ludicrous and stupid this film is, even the people who are making it and investing their time and energy and risking their lives for it. Which kind of seems a little bit too arch and sad, really.
Definitely.
I wonder whether that is the biggest difference between them. They're both sort of about the life of the stuntman and the price that you might possibly pay to create these stories and cast these shadows on a screen. But at least The Fall respects how you get there and what you get for it.
Yep.
Whereas The Fall Guy just kind of wants to be a little bit smart and ironic and doesn't really respect the process. Which means it's a little bit like saying it's hard to respect someone who doesn't respect themselves. Am I right?
Yeah, I think so.
It's kind of inviting you to sneer rather than taking your concerns seriously. I think that might be one of the reasons why I got to the end of The Fall really feeling like I'd had an enriching experience.
Yep.
And I got to the end of The Fall Guy and did not share that feeling.
No. Yeah, the film they're making is called Metal Storm. We didn't even mention Metal Storm, I don't think. Yeah. And I like the piece about respect, because I do feel that there's this sort of underhanded, at least unappreciation of writers, because they're suggesting that there's no third act written, and that this thing has no real writer on set or who they would contact, and and honestly, it kind of speaks about The Fall Guy itself as well as speaking about Metal Storm. I also think that there's this bizarre moment at the end, in the end credits for The Fall Guy. We're supposed to be celebrating the stuntmen, and we see bits of the work on the film that the stuntmen and stuntwomen did, and yet we miss their names in the credits because they're playing alongside the credits. So it's sort of a diss to the actual guys that you're supposed to be celebrating, that, you could have flashed their names as they're doing a stunt. I think that would have been the more appropriate thing to do.
Yeah.
But they're running side by side in parallel now. I find myself looking, okay, what am I supposed to watch the credits and, give those guys a nod? Or am I supposed to watch the stunts because they're so incredible in this film? And, I felt like that was a little bit of a disrespectful thing to the people they were trying to celebrate. So I think disrespect is an interesting angle to come at that from. Yeah, for sure.
They are trying to have their cake and eat it.
It's the other thing that neither one of these films shows a whole lot of restraint. And I think in the case of the more, I'm going to call it the American film, The Fall Guy, it's just, if it were more restrained, I think it would have been a better film. And there's just so much adrenaline that the quiet moments are super dull by comparison. It's not like they stand out at all. Those are all these basically the talky scenes between Gosling and Blunt. They just don't really hold up very well, because we know that they're just like breaks between the next stunts and the next action sequences and set pieces, and it just ends up being not very good storytelling. Whereas I think there's no restraint in Tarsum's work either, but it's kind of epic, and at least it's visual, and you're getting some story out of it, and it kind of just washes over you too. You just get absorbed in some of these images. So I think they're definitely both over the top, but one has no reason to go over the top, other than, okay, it's a blockbuster and we want people to go to the cinemas in the summer. And then the other one, I think, really is just an artist with a very active imagination, capturing the active imagination of a young girl.
I predict that we'll look back at 2024 as the year of restraint in Hollywood cinema, Yep, I think we're going to see a lot more of that restraint this year. I can feel it.
Yeah,
Speaking of restraint, restrain ourselves from walking to the popcorn counter, we should also talk about what else has been playing at this theatre.
What did you see? What did you see?
So, an anime for us this week. We watched Suzume, 2022 animated Japanese feature, which has just recently come onto Netflix, directed by Makoto Shinkai, who made a film called Your Name, which we all enjoyed a couple of years ago. And it's good fun. It shares a similar structure to that film, Your Name, insofar as for the first 15 minutes, you get all the usual kind of Japanese animated film tropes. You have, it's about an insecure, lonely schoolgirl, a mysterious man, a portal to another world, a secret monster, hidden magic, a talking cat. It kind of ticks all those normal boxes. Yeah. And then at the 15-minute mark, something... I'm not sure if I should spoil this or not. I'll take your advice whether you want me to spoil it or not. At the 15-minute mark, something really fun happens. So it just changes the tone of the whole of the rest of the movie. Do you want me to spoil it for you or not?
Spoil.
Or what happens is that out of the two main characters, one of them gets turned into a chair.
Ooh. Oh.
And then remains a chair for the whole of the rest of the film.
Oh, man, the disrespect.
So it's this girl walking around with a chair. It's it's completely mad and kind of great fun.
Nice.
It's nice to get to the end of a movie and think, well, I didn't expect that.
Yeah.
It's very slightly too long. It doesn't entirely stick the landing, but it's an 8 out of 10 film. It's good fun.
Good.
Really good fun. What's been playing at your theatre?
My theater was the museum yesterday. I just saw one film other than this week's films that I remember anyway. I went to see, and you've probably already seen this, what is billed as Ken Loach's final film.
Oh, right.
Of course, we just saw Land and Freedom, and the writer on that was Paul Laverty. This is how many years later? We're probably about 40 years later, right?
30 years later, I think. Yeah.
The Old Oak.
Ah.
Super topical. It's about Syrian refugees moving to north of England. Seems like it was coal mining country, but near the coast, probably Newcastle area.
Right.
And just the fish out of water experience, the battling of the old ways and these new people coming in and getting a lot of resources from a community that's volunteering to support them versus the old timers who don't have that kind of support. It was wonderful. Oh my God, I was crying for a lot of it and just thinking, Ken Loach, man, he's been out there. I think he's been making films for 60 years is what I read. So I think he's 87. They're saying it's his last film. It's really strong. I liked it so much and super, as you can imagine, super naturalistic. I mean, I felt like, some of them were super trained actors and others were acting for the first time, but very, very human. No easy answers, no easy ending, but really satisfying. And just a great way. If this is his last film, it's a great way to go out. It was just, I recommend it highly. I believe it's on Netflix. I just wanted to see it on a bigger screen. So I took the chance yesterday and I saw it the right way. I think that's it. A lot of big screen with a lot of old people. Those museum films are all old people, which is great. I feel young when I'm watching them, but not enough young people seeing films like that. So it was a good experience, good film. I'm going to give it, what did you do 8 out of 10 on a film?
8 out of 10.
Oh my God. 9.5 here. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's Loach's last film. I mean, he's going out strong. If you're not a Ken Loach fan, don't see it, I guess, but you should be a Ken Loach fan and you should see it.
Yeah, there's no excuse not to be a Ken Loach fan, I think.
I think in his retirement, he would be a great guy to have on the pod. The guy's going to have some free time here coming up, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We should ask him on. It just shows if you've been doing something for 65 years, you've probably figured out how to do it by now.
Yeah, it feels efficient. Like the storytelling, I think, Laverty gave him a very shootable script, a very good story. Oh, but there's a pit bull mishap.
Oh, no.
We've talked about this. There's one scene where a pit bull does something not so nice, and I didn't like that part. But otherwise, great film. Some cute dogs.
It's not often that Ken Loach gets a warning from the Cliche Squad.
Yeah, that's true. It's hard finding cliches in his film, but we'll give him a pass. The man has earned it. Come on.
Let him off with a caution. Yeah. Just don't do it in your next film, Ken. Just time for the socials on Instagram. We are at 2 Real Cinema Club. You can read the blog at 2realcinemaclub.com, comment on our YouTube channel, or email us. We love your emails. We do love your emails. 2realcinemaclub@gmail.com. Next time, next time we're going to be seeing the film which kind of is Metal Storm, I think, from the Fall Guy. We are going to watch the new George Miller picture, Furiosa. Yeah. And we will be comparing it to...
We're taking a ride down Memory Road or Fury Road.
Mad Max Memory Road.
It's recent memory, fortunately, 2015, Fury Road.
It's not often at the end that the older classic film is quite so recent. I have badgered you about seeing Mad Max Fury Road many times before, and I'm going to force you to watch it next time. I think the finest action film, and I use that word advisedly, of the 21st century. I only hope that watching it again next week, I'm not going to be filled with embarrassment and regret when I realise I was wrong. Let's find out. Join us next time for a bit of shenanigans in the desert. Until then, thanks for joining us as always. See you next time.
See you next time, everyone.